Today we're going to cover the RPA, or the Residential Purchase Agreement, the version that was updated in December 2022. This document is the most important piece of paperwork when you are buying or selling a home in California. So what do you need to know about this document? Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Theresa Wellman with HomeownerExperience.com. The document we are covering today is 16 pages long. It was revised, reorganized, and updated by the California Association of Realtors in December 2022 to put all the variables on the first 3 pages for easiest reference. The best part of these first 3 pages is they act like a table of contents, referencing on the left side the specific paragraphs and the remaining 13 pages of boilerplate text at the end. Now, you may hear this document called a purchase agreement, offer, or purchase contract, but those terms are all the same, and we're all talking about the RPA. We will emphasize the first 3 pages, then highlight some sections of the boilerplate where I see most questions. One common question I am asked often is, what does home under contract mean? Well, that means when the seller has signed and accepted your offer on page 15. Then the home is under contract, but there might still be contingencies. So the day the seller signs is day 0 of the escrow clock and the days accounted for in this document. So let's go ahead and get started with page 1. As you can see here on my screen is page 1, revised December 2022. And the first critical information is the date it's prepared, the name of the buyer, the address, and the assessor's parcel number. This is the property tax assessor's number for the actual property. Then you're gonna see the seller's brokerage and the buyer's brokerage, and then we're gonna get into the actual details of your offer. So here, the purchase price, the close of escrow date, or maybe the number of days. Many times it's 21 or 30 days, and like I said before, day 0 is when the seller signs the contract, then you would count calendar days from then forward. The only thing that counts business days is going to be this initial deposit amount, which is 3 business days by default. But in San Jose, we commonly see this as 1 business day because things are selling quickly and with multiple offers. So sellers want to see the buyer's deposit in quickly to make sure they're moving forward and have collateral in escrow for the transaction. Then this will detail out your loan amount, including the interest rate, whether it's fixed, whether it's FHA or VA or any other critical details. And then the remainder of the down payment. So if you're putting 20% down on a property, you put an initial 3% deposit down, the balance of the 17% plus your closing costs would be due at the end. This does not account closing costs in here. It's just talking about the actual purchase price and the down payment amount and how that splits. Now, rolling on to page 2, this reviews timelines of many items. The biggest stress point I see here is setting unrealistic timelines. Now, working together with your agent and lender in this section is critical while putting together your offer. Using a lender and an agent who has a lot of local purchase experience can mean the difference between an enjoyable or extremely stressful process. It also can save you lots of money. You would be surprised how many people use an out-of-area agent and end up putting terms in here that aren't really local and maybe pay fees that they wouldn't normally have to. So working with a local agent is really important. And as far as a lender goes, you definitely want to work with somebody who is recommended, not only as purchase experience, but is recommended either by your agent or one of your friends who's done a transaction, a purchase transaction very recently with them. The one fear that stops people here is the what if on contingencies. Work with your agent that knows the RPA inside and out so you know your options and do your research up front. The prep is the most important part if you're writing an offer where there is competition. The first thing when competition is there is to tighten up those contingencies. So let's look at the screen here and talk about all those different timelines. So verification of your funds is typically attached to the offer. You see that is the default, or within 3 days, as well as your pre-approval or loan application. Again, those are things that we would normally include with the offer. Now here is the contingencies section. First is going to be your loan contingency, and it's really important that you look at removing that as soon as possible. I recommend all my clients get fully pre-approved and ideally underwritten before they go home shopping and make an offer so that they can confidently remove this contingency if the situation it requires it. Appraisal is going to be doing all of your research up front in regards to the price and the comparable sales and making an educated guess as to whether the property will appraise or not and whether you need a contingency here. Again, working with your lender and your realtor is going to be critical on this piece as well. And then the third big one is investigation of property. Now there's a lot of different contingencies to this, but on one form, they're going to group these all together as a sub, and you can remove these or comment on all these on the removal of contingency form. For example, did the seller provide all the necessary and legally required documents? Lots of times sellers will be providing those upfront in the disclosure package. Did you get them all? That's something to check with your agent. The preliminary title report telling you how the seller owns the property and if there's any liens or other details regarding an HOA on the property. Then are there common interest disclosures, which is another way to say HOA disclosures that you need to review, and are they available? And has the seller leased or liened any items at the property, and you need to know the details and terms of that? And then do you have a property to sell? Now, all these timelines are going to be very critical to work on. And ideally, if you've got competition, again, you're going to want to minimize or remove these contingencies to make your offer the strongest to go in towards the seller. So we would talk through all the risk and whether you have enough information and research up front to be able to remove those, or if you need additional time to explore other factors. Also on this timeline page is going to be the time of possession. Default is that upon recording of the escrow or close of escrow, you would take possession. Sometimes the seller is asking for more time after closing for them to be in possession. And there's two different forms depending on the timeline for the seller in possession period. Now again, more timelines of the seller delivering documents if they haven't done that, as well as details such as smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors, which need to be in place for an appraisal. So if you're getting a loan, you need to make sure the seller is abiding by these pretty quickly, usually within 3 or 4 days. So I would shorten this timeline. Now, page 3 covers costs and other local details, including if you were buying in a seller pay or a buyer pay county. After helping hundreds of buyers, what I've learned is many buyers do not know what the local closing costs are or what's a lender closing cost versus a local closing cost. In Santa Clara County, it is a seller pay county, so there are different fees than many other surrounding counties. You, of course, should be aware of this and understand these closing costs up front before going in to make an offer on a property. Many of these closing costs are not dependent on your lender, so when you get a net sheet from your lender, they can be varying hugely and off, and it's really critical to have an understanding of these costs with your realtor to know what to expect, what's a variable of a lender, what's a variable of the property or the area or of the escrow company. So this is going to specify how everything happens, and this is the standard for Santa Clara County. The seller would pay for the natural hazard disclosures, they would pay for any smoke detectors or anything by law, they would pay for the escrow fee, the title insurance fee, and they're going to pay for the county transfers tax fee. Now, the city of San Jose, as well as Palo Alto, have some city transfer taxes, so you need to be aware and again, work with a local agent who knows these things, that in San Jose, the standard is for buyer and seller to split that 50-50. And there's actually 2 different transfer taxes if you're over the $2 million price point. So you need to be aware of those and know how much those are going to add to your closing costs. The last thing that we're going to spell out here is a home warranty, who buys and pays for it. What kind of home warranty is it going to be? Typically the seller will pay for this, the buyer will order and request. Now we're going to skip ahead to paragraph 9, which details what's normally included in the sale. If you'd like a copy of the sample contract, definitely reach out so you can read it in more detail. Now stay tuned to hear about buyer investigation rights, because that's going to be the next thing that we cover. So scrolling down to paragraph 9, I have highlighted all of this here of what's included, what's excluded. So all existing fixtures, which means things attached to the property, are included. That includes things such as, of course, ceiling fans and plumbing fixtures. It also includes solar systems and built-in appliances, any window coverings such as draperies or shutters, or any sort of blinds. It of course includes air conditioning units, pool equipment. This list goes on and on. So if you want to read more details, of course do that. But it also includes home smart features, unless you're specifically saying in paragraph 3P that you are not including these items. So definitely understand what's included, what's not included. And there is items excluded here, and this details TVs and brackets and how that all works out. So know your rights and know what's included and excluded, so you can make sure to figure out the proper details here at the top of page 3, where you checkbox everything that would be included or excluded. Now we're going to move on to paragraph 12, which is related to buyer investigation contingencies. I'm most commonly asked about contingencies and what timelines make sense. Now, of course, this really depends on the market conditions, but if you're expecting any competition with another buyer like we see here in San Jose often, then you must work with your agent to tighten up or remove as many contingencies as you can comfortably do in order to compete. Now, to do this, of course, you must do your research up front. We're not asking you to take undue risk, but we are asking that you thoroughly research everything up front as much as possible to minimize those contingencies. So when you're shopping for a home in San Jose, you should set up a buyer consultation with us so that we can walk you through these steps and processes to be prepared to minimize those contingencies. Pages 10 and 11 explain what happens if either the buyer or seller does not perform and what steps the other party can take, such as notice to perform documents. Page 12 are the escrow standards and processing steps. And page 13 defines the terms and timelines that are spelled out in the contract. Now, page 14 is a really important one that you need to be aware of because it has 2 optional paragraphs. Both of these paragraphs I advise my clients to check. And why is that? Well, first is this liquidated damages is saying that your initial deposit money is held as collateral for you to move forward with escrow. Now, the seller is going to really want to see this, but it also limits that amount to no more than 3% of the purchase price. So buyer, it's protecting you to not anything larger than that. So it's really critical. And the second one is in regards to the arbitration of disputes. So if something were to go south, in either case, whether it's liquidated damages and you want your funds back, or something goes south in the contract, you have a dispute that needs to be figured out. There is this clause for arbitration, which of course is optional, but I do advise my clients to go ahead and initial this, and 99% of clients do initial both of these paragraphs. And the reason is because you don't want to wait a year or 2 to get in the court system to figure out your dispute. You would rather have some binding arbitration to get this done quickly and dealt with and move forward. Now, page 15 is where the buyer and seller will go ahead and sign, and page 16 is where the agents are going to go ahead and sign. Because I'm so committed to you experiencing less stress through the process, we discuss these details up front again in the buyer consultation and take steps to plan and minimize your risk by getting fully approved by a lender first, then start home shopping. When you get serious about finding the next home, even if it's 3 to 6 months away, I recommend a buyer consultation. People often ask me tips and tricks for navigating the home buying process, and this buyer consultation meeting is focused on planning and educating you with insider tips. We enjoy putting the best plan together with you to create the best outcome. When we meet, these are things you can expect, things that my best clients say they really appreciated. First off, insider tips for the loan process and our list of favorite lenders, discussion of your purchase power and budget so you understand how banks determine loan amounts. Third, help you build your ideal property profile with your budget in mind, and also talk through the best tools to use and how to avoid common mistakes. And really valuable is we help you make a strategic plan and timeline to meet your goals. We'll also discuss different neighborhoods and cities and address your questions in this meeting. If these insider tips are what you're looking for, schedule a free buyer consultation with us, either in person or on Zoom. Check out the link below.